Welcome back to GP Fans and another edition of Parks Fermé. And while Ian Parks isn't Fermé on the ground just yet, that didn't even work. That was a terrible joke. But I'm delighted to say Ian Parks is joining me here to run through a little bit of a preview to, of course, the action coming up this weekend at the Circuit de Catalunya in Spain for the Spanish Grand Prix. Ian, first and foremost, how you doing today, mate?
I'm good, Ollie. I hope you're good as well. Hope everybody listening's doing okay. Thanks for joining us today, folks.
I will leave the puns to you in your writing rather than me trying to do them on here, and we'll just dive straight into some of the talking points coming up this weekend. Importantly, the Spanish Grand Prix is going to see a lot of upgrades, it seems, coming from a number of teams, including Ferrari this weekend. This is like testing 2.0, it feels a little bit.
It's what we've been waiting for, isn't it? We know over the course of the season so far that a few of the teams have been introducing updates here and there in little drips and drabs because it's part of the regulations, just to try and improve the car little bit by little bit, given these new aerodynamic rules that we've got this season. But as you've mentioned, Ollie, this is the big one. This is the one where the majority of the teams will be rolling out something that little bit extra because it's Barcelona's Circuit de Catalunya. It's the circuit they know like the back of their hands. And they've got so much data from this track that when they do introduce these upgrades, and in particular when we consider what they were doing at the start of pre-season testing at this circuit, when they do introduce these upgrades, they've got a good base on which to then judge these upgrades as to how they will work in contrast to how they performed in pre-season testing. As you say, number of teams producing these parts across this weekend. Ferrari, as we rightly know, is the biggest one. We've been waiting for them to finally show their hand a little bit because they've done nothing so far, pretty much. Just little tiny tweaks here and there. Red Bull, as we know, they brought bits and pieces along the way. Mercedes, they introduced a new front and rear wing primarily at the last race in Miami. They had to get something on that car because they've been running out of time in terms of playing catch up with Red Bull and Ferrari. But now, as we say, this is the big one. This is the one that we should see plenty of new parts across the cars, with the exception of one team, Haas.
It's always Haas just holding back, and Gunther Steiner saying earlier this week it could be another 4 or 5 races before upgrades come for that. Are we going to see some side pods put on this Mercedes at any point? Because we last saw a Mercedes with side pods, of course, at testing in Spain in pre-season.
I don't think so. We can't rule it out because Toto Wolff and primarily George Russell have turned around and said that they will be pursuing the concept that they decided to go with out of pre-season testing for a while yet. So it would appear to suggest that they will continue with this so-called zero side pod concept that they eventually came out of with testing. Yes, they did have a normal side pod, as we saw in that first pre-season test. Then they swapped, went to that zero side pod design. Who knows what they might do? But as I say, for all intents and purposes, from everything that's been coming out of the team, it would appear that they're going to stick with it. George turned around and said that they know coming out of Miami that they have got a fast car in there. They saw it in practice on Friday in Miami. They then went in the wrong direction across the course of that weekend in trying to find extra downforce. And going into qualifying on Saturday, they'd really lost their way. Even in reverting back to what they felt they'd done on Friday, they still lost their way. They couldn't replicate the situation that they enjoyed that particular day when they came out quickest. George was on top. So who knows what Mercedes might come out with? That really is a mystery. But as they say, George has said, they know there is a quick car in there. It's just finding the right plan to completely unlock what they are saying, what George has described as this killer key to perfection.
Now, we'll come on to perhaps why some people don't enjoy the Spanish Grand Prix as much as maybe others in just a moment. But just quickly, in terms of the importance of this race, and we've touched on Ferrari, of course, are going to be bringing an upgrade package. Is this important for the rest of the season because we've seen Red Bull make those strides over these first few races and catching up with the Scuderia? And now it's important to see that reaction that Mattia Binotto and his team have.
Yeah, primarily that's exactly the case because let's face it, Ferrari has done well to start off on the front foot. It then obviously was caught quite considerably in Imola, where we know Charles Leclerc made that big mistake during the race that cost him a good handful of points. And we'll see at the end of the season whether that will prove costly as well. And we know that Red Bull has been introducing bits and pieces. Now, Red Bull has been trying its best to bring these bits and pieces on board because it has what has been made clear, a weight problem. It is still unable to make the weight with its RB18. So over the course of these few races so far, they've been introducing these upgrades and slowly bringing down the weight of its car. When eventually the belief is that they will finally make weight. Ferrari, in contrast, virtually nothing, just the odd little tweak here and there to its aerodynamics. But it has still managed to maintain its lead in the constructors. Charles has managed to maintain his lead in the Drivers' Championship. So now, if the upgrade it introduces this weekend is a good one, considerably more so than Red Bull, then will we see what we saw at the start of the season and Charles run away with the next 2 or 3 races before Red Bull might again be able to finally play a bit of catch up? It's going to be fascinating. Maybe not so much on track, as you've already alluded to, because we know Grand Prix at the Circuit de Catalunya just do not lend themselves to fantastic racing. But at least we've got something to talk about in terms of what we're going to see with the new aerodynamic parts on these cars. So that in itself should be fascinating.
And I suppose if Ferrari make a big step forward, then it encourages Red Bull to eat into their budget cap as well, which has been mentioned this week. And as long as Carlos Sainz can stay out of the walls, it might give Ferrari another advantage, perhaps in the financial situation as well, as this title battle draws on.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of toing and froing, haven't we there? Mattia Binotto started it by questioning these constant Red Bull updates and upgrades and wondering as to how much that was eating into their budget cap, hoping, according to him, that if that's what they are doing, if all these updates are eating away into that budget cap, then at some point across the course of the season, I don't know, halfway, 2/3, who knows, they've got to stop developing because they will have run out of money. Whereas Ferrari, now Helmut Marko being cheeky in return, yes, Ferrari, as we've mentioned, haven't brought much so far. However, they've had all these incidents with Carlos Sainz in Australia, Imola, Miami, and that will have cost them their own chunk of change that has eaten into their budget cap. So a nice little bit of banter that's been going on between these two teams. But that's what we want as well. We saw it last year between Mercedes and Red Bull as to the off-track war of words in many respects that developed between Toto Wolff and Christian Horner. I think there's a little bit more respect this time around between Christian and Mattia, but nevertheless, let's have a little bit of this off-track stuff as well, just to keep things interesting. That's what we want to see. And of course, we also want Mercedes to come firmly into the mix as well, to make it a good 3-way tussle at the majority of the Grand Prix. And who knows, maybe even for that title race, if they can make big enough strides. That's a big question mark hanging over Mercedes at present.
Yeah, I mean, give it another 5-6 races and we'll see how that mutual respect is between Christian Horner and Mattia Binotto. Just quickly, Zach Brown as well, Ian, has alluded this week that perhaps there are 5 races on the Grand Prix calendar at the moment that perhaps don't provide the same pomp and circumstance as some of the others, at least off the track, particularly after the success of Miami. Could this be a case that maybe we see Spain being a biannual fixture rather than annual fixture on the calendar, do you think?
It's a point that Zach has been pushing for quite some time now, and it makes common sense when you think about it, because F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali has already come out and said this season that there is that much interest in Formula One at present that they could have 30 Grand Prix on any calendar. At the moment, we have 23, which will be a record-breaking season. We will get that replacement for Russia. From what I gather, there is an announcement due quite shortly on that. We've been waiting on that for a few weeks now. So we will have 23. Within the Concord Agreement, there is provision for 24. And it seems quite clearly that we will go to that next season. We've got Las Vegas coming on board. China's vying to get back on the calendar as well. So we should push the 24 limit next season. So Zach has been suggesting that with some of these lesser, and again, I'm using that, and I know I've used that a few times in this video so far, but with a lesser circuits, he feels that there could be a rotation in place. So he's thinking that we have 13, 14, 15 Grand Prix that really give us the show, both on and off track for the most, both on and off track for the most part on it. We know Miami didn't quite live up to the hype on track as it did off. Fantastic event off, but we know that circuit is going to be improved for next season. So he thinks there are, as I say, 14, 15, 16 Grand Prix that have absolutely nailed it in terms of its package. There are a number of others, 5, he said, that don't quite come up to scratch. And he feels they are the ones that could rotate on a biannual basis. So that means then we still have that 23, 24 maximum within the Concord Agreement. What he didn't say, Ollie, is which 5 he felt were not quite on a par with some of these big events now that we've got. I think we can guess as to which ones. I know Imola would definitely be one after my experiences there this year, but it didn't live up to F1 standards, shall we say. I think Barcelona is probably we're looking at that as well. When you're going further into the season, you could potentially suggest the likes of maybe Hungary, great venue, but again, off track, it's not really doing that much to promote its event. Probably maybe Belgium, again, fantastic circuit.
Slanderous.
I know.
Spa-Francorchamps into this discussion.
But F1 is looking at the entire package these days, not just what it can provide on track. And we know as well that Belgium has been one of those that's really struggled to keep pace financially, to bring in the funds necessary to pay for its annual contract. That is one of those races that has been mentioned before that could become a biannual event, chopping and changing with another circuit. And then another one that we're potentially looking at might be Brazil. As I say, Zach Brown didn't mention, but when you look at this year's calendar and you think which ones might he be referring to, those are probably the ones that are probably looking tenuous, shall we say, because if you look at some of the other events, Holland was magnificent last year. You've only got to think of the Max Verstappen spectacle. Italy and Monza, we know, is fantastic with what the fans bring there. Very different to Imola, from what I've experienced. And then you look at, Silverstone, we know, is a magnificent event these days. They've ploughed a load of money into really building up their event on and off track. So all these European ones, those last 3 I just mentioned, seem pretty secure, pretty safe. It's more looking at the other European ones that I think probably, as I say, these ones that could rotate according to Zach. But we will see what route F1 wants to go down in the future. But I think it's probably a very good idea that we did something like that.
It's this idea of street circuits, isn't it? And if you've got a Grand Prix race in a city on a street circuit, it's easier for people to get to and to feel involved in, and it just ups the excitement a little bit more with all of those walls. But look, I'm one for tradition. I love a proper Grand Prix circuit, and I love Spa-Francorchamps. Be ashamed to see that be a biannual affair. Ian, you're going to be out there in Spain, I believe, topping up the TAM from Miami this weekend?
Actually, this is one of the few Grand Prix I have decided to pass, just being honest with the viewers. We've got Deputy Editor Sam Hall over there on our behalf, but I will be in Monaco. What a surprise. I'm going to Monaco, right?
Miami and Monaco, and then he lets Sam have the stale Spanish Grand Prix, where you can follow all of Sam's musings from at the circuit on gpfans.com. And of course, Ian and Ewan and everybody else at gpfans.com will be updating as well with all of the news in the build-up and throughout the weekend here at GP Fans. And be sure to hit subscribe down below to stay with us for the whole of the 2022 season and beyond.
Keep watching, folks. Thank you.
Well, as always seems to be the case at GP Fans, we've got our finger on the pulse, but our recording was about 30 seconds behind. It always happens with the GP Fans Stewards Room podcast as well. But in Parks, we've had some breaking news around the Russian Grand Prix replacement situation. Tell us more.
Yeah, obviously we've just been discussing there, Ollie, that there was going to be a record-breaking 23 race season this year. Well, that is not now the case because F1 within the last hour has decided that it will only be 22 races this season. There will be no replacement now for the axed Russian Grand Prix, despite firm speculation to the contrary over the past few weeks.
Over the past few minutes from us as well, to be honest, here talking
Yeah.
about it. All of the information that you want around this is going to be available on gpfans.com. So get over there, check out the statement from the FIA and Formula One. But the breaking news that it will be a 22 race season in 2022, all part perhaps of saving the costs as well for the teams, considering the high inflation that all the teams are facing at the moment under the strict budget cap of Formula One. Ian, once more, thank you so much for breaking the news with us today, mate.
You're welcome.